Welcome to Sarah Speaks. I'm Sarah, and today I'm speaking on knowing Jesus and the woman who was caught in adultery. So I really woke up thinking about this story this morning. Um, and interestingly, this is a story that's recorded in John chapter 7, verse 53 to 8, chapter 8, verse 11. And my Bible, I have an ESV, and it says in here, the earliest manuscripts do not include this. So this is a story that's actually only in John's Gospel. It's not included in the earliest manuscripts of John's Gospel. And when you look it up, I had a look, and some people say that it's actually been attributed to John, whereas it was written by someone else. All that to say, I still think it's a story that has got some impact and meaning for us and is helpful on understanding Jesus a little bit more. So I'm going to read it. Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning, he came again to the temple. All the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. The scribes and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in adultery, and placing her in the midst, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. Now, in the law, Moses commanded us to stone such women. So what do you say?" They said this to test him, that they might have some charge to bring against him. Jesus bent down and wrote with his finger on the ground. And as they continued to ask him, he stood up and said to them, "Let him who is without sin among you be the first to throw a stone at her." And once more, he bent down and wrote on the ground. But when they heard it, they went away one by one, beginning with the older ones. And Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus stood up and said to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" And she said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go, and from now on, sin no more." And I was really, as I lay in bed this morning, thinking about this, both from the perspective of Jesus and also from the perspective of this woman. And first of all, hello, you can't commit adultery by yourself. So where is the person that she was committing adultery with? Secondly, we've got no idea. Is she the one that's cheating, or was the man she was with cheating? We don't know. What we do know is that the Pharisees, the scribes and the Pharisees, were so intent on trying to trick Jesus. They were really angry with him because, it says here, all the people came to him. He's got people following him, left, right, and center. Right, actually, from when he was a boy and he was in the temple. So he was 12 years old, and he was in the temple for 3 years. So basically, what happened was they went up to the temple for a feast. Everyone would travel in crowds of communities and that kind of thing. They're on their way back when Mary, Jesus' mother, realizes that Jesus isn't with them, isn't with anyone they're traveling with, and is like, "Where is he?" They find him after 3 days in the temple, where he's been sitting with the teachers and listening to them and asking them lots of questions. And it says here, all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. And then again, this is reading from Luke chapter 2. In verse 52, it says, Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with man. We know, Jesus is someone who's filled with wisdom. And throughout his ministry, you just see he has people flocking around him all the time, which incidentally, I do want to do. I do want to record something on how he looked after himself. And we even see in this first verse where it says Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, and then early in the morning he came again to the temple. I'll put that to the side. I'll talk about that another time. But here we've got all the people coming to him and listening to him, when the scribes and the Pharisees were kind of like, the people should be following us, they should be listening to us. There's so much jealousy, and they were just out to get him, no matter what. So here they bring this woman caught in the act of adultery. And I just think, from her perspective, here she is. I can imagine them coming in and just throwing them down at Jesus' feet. And how she would have felt. First of all, the shame of being caught in that act, and then publicly pronounced as as that's what she's been doing. That shame of being caught in the act and then of being dragged out from there, thrown into a very public place where all the people have come. They're all around Jesus, and here she is, having been caught in this act of adultery, and these people standing around are being like, she should be stoned to death. Just like, can you imagine how she would have been feeling? Like shame, bewilderment, terror. Like, I can imagine that she was crying. She would have been on the ground, and I can't imagine that she would have been looking up and making eye contact with anyone. And then you've got Jesus, who is just, like we say, so filled with wisdom. And there's a quote. It's back in Samuel when it's talking about God, and it says, "The Lord doesn't look at the outward appearances; He looks at the heart." And when I think about Jesus, and so much of what we see in the stories about him, we see him looking beyond what's just happening in front of him, and we see him looking to the people's hearts. And he obviously knows they're out to catch him and out to, actually they want to kill him. Can you imagine what they all were thinking? Like, they cast this woman down. They're like, she should be stoned. Like, what do you say? And Jesus just starts writing words in the dirt. Who knows what he was writing? We don't know what he was writing. And they're like, we're asking you a question. What should we be going to get the stones? Like, let's, do you agree we should be stoning her? And here's the wisdom. Let whoever here is among you that hasn't sinned, let that person be the first one to cast the stone. And you can see as well in the response of the people that wisdom comes with age, because as they were convicted in their own hearts, knowing that each one of them had done wrong in God's eyes at some stage or other, right? That conviction allowed them to turn away and leave. It says starting at the oldest, and I think there's something in that. We have a deeper understanding of who we are as we age, and someone once mentioned to me not that long ago about how, young people, teenagers, early 20s, how they're so self-righteous, like life hasn't caught up with them yet. So it's so easy for them to be self-righteous without even realizing that that's what's happening. And then as you get older and you really start to understand just the way we are, and experiences in life knock you around a little bit. Yeah, I think it's much easier. It's much easier to convict yourself and realize like how far out of alignment you've allowed yourself to go when I talk about like alignment with God. And to go, yeah, like which one of us hasn't? And when I think about this, actually, I think about the parable where it talks about, which I'll probably cover at another stage, but because I think it's such an impactful parable. And it talks about someone who's got a beam in their own eye. Can you just imagine like a massive plank of wood sticking out of your eye, and yet you are obsessed with and pointing out the mote, like the tiniest little speck in someone else's eye. And it takes a willingness to see yourself for who you really are, to be able to address the fact that you've got a beam in your own eye, which stops you from being able to even see the other person clearly. But we have to address our own stuff. We have to address our own stuff before we can even think about accusing anyone else. I mean, this is just mere accusation, isn't it? Like, that there's no let's come alongside you and support you and help you. Like, how has this happened? Let's be with you and like actually shepherd you. No, she was cast down. Her sin was like yelled out in front of people. She deserves to die. Like, we see this kind of behavior within people that declare that they are Christians all the time. And so much of it comes from not being willing to address like the massive beam that's sticking in your own eye, because it's hard for us to admit actually, well, I am out of alignment and I need to do something about it. The good thing with a beam is it's reasonably easy to see and remove if we're willing to see and remove it. Anyway, off they go one by one. And then Jesus turns to the woman, because he's not just like, well, the problem's gone, they've gone. No, like he met her where she was at, in the ground, at his feet, terrified, feeling full of shame. And he just turns to her and says, where are they? Has no one condemned you? And she manages to say, no one, Lord. And he says, neither do I condemn you. Now, this is the man that has been able to go around and forgive people's sins. And I love the fact he says here, neither do I condemn you. Right? He's like, I'm not come here to tell you like how bad you are, like you're a terrible person, you shouldn't have done this. He's like, no, I'm going to give you a word of encouragement. Off you go. And like, don't do it again. He says, don't sin no more. And I really look at sin as being out of alignment with God's character and with who God is. He's like, go and live a life that's in alignment with God. And I find it really interesting as well that when we read, we so often read like with glasses on. Like we have our own paradigm with which we see the world and with which we see the Bible. And part of, I think, growing in our understanding of who God is and what he wants from us is being willing to see where we may have been misinterpreting, or where we haven't even comprehended the words that we've read simply because they haven't fit within the worldview that we've been operating within. And I probably can't find it now, but I've been reading a little bit of John, and I do get confused. This is part of why I'm doing this. Like, the Bible is not always easy to understand, and you've got to like mull it over. But Jesus talks about, I didn't come into the world. He's like, I didn't. Here we go. Well, Jesus says, I'm pretty sure Jesus says it himself, but actually, God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world. He didn't come with a ministry of condemnation. I'm coming to like tell everyone how wrong they are, right? He came in order that the world might be saved through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, right? And that's following just after God so loved the world that he gave his only son. Whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. And here we have this interaction with this woman where she had been thrown down and publicly shamed. Right, can you imagine how she felt after this? What she would have thought about Jesus? Here is a man that met me where I was at and sent me off with words of encouragement. And I can imagine she would have come back and followed him to find out some more. So those are my thoughts on the woman caught in adultery. And I guess I'd leave it with these thoughts, like, where are you finding yourself accusing other people and wanting to publicly shame them? And where can you allow yourself to see the reality of where you're at and allow, like Jesus, to come and to comfort you? As always, like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or anything you ever want me to answer, email me, q@sarahspeaks.life. See you next time.